Hello, welcome to the C50 podcast.
Jay, Becca, Bella, and myself all know that mental health is important, and those sitting around this table are either diagnosed with a mental illness or support someone who is.
If you're anything like us, you may be listening to this while you drive, work, clean, or you could be doing many other things. We would encourage you to visit www.c50hope.com, where you can follow up with our podcast and get more help.
We have worked hard to build C50 into a ministry that can reach those affected by someone's struggle with mental health and a deeper illness. We believe that a relationship with Christ is key in finding hope. However, we're not professionals. Think on our words, process them, but never consider us more important than a doctor or therapist you may be working with. We would love to recommend professionals that value all your needs, including medication and therapy, and will also point to Jesus Christ as the center of your life and the way for healing and taking you from hurt to hope.
There are a lot of people that give to C50 that make this all possible. We have people praying, many that give financially, people that donate time or space.
And as an example, we've found a home for the C50 podcast, generously donated for us at McQueen Builders in the South Hills of Pittsburgh, PA. Let's call this McQueen Studios, and this is where we pick up today.
All right, welcome to McQueen Studios. We're glad that you are listening, tuning in from wherever you're tuning in from, and it's a Saturday morning. We have coffee in our hands, Coca-Cola to keep us awake, but we are super excited about today's podcast, and across from me is sitting a awesome friend of mine, and we're going to get into that in a second, but I'm going to try this again. We're at McQueen Studios, and if you want anything done for your construction needs, go to McQueen Studios. And we pay this guy in coffee and Coke, and so Jeff McQueen is just this awesome guy. So, okay, so Lo.
Hello.
Glad you're here.
Or Lorraine Shipman, as most people know her.
Yeah, right. When did Lo start?
I don't even know. I don't even know who started that.
It was me.
Was it?
Yeah, it was me.
And it became Low Ship.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think that was me, and I think that I do call my daughter Lo.
There you go.
So, maybe
You know what's funny?
There's a connection.
So one of the Panamanians put on their card saying thank you, Low Chip.
Low Chip. Love it.
That's amazing.
Low Chip.
I call her Lorraine. Just straight up Lorraine.
Yeah, Lorraine.
Lorraine.
So, Lorraine.
Yes.
Hey, guess what? Lorraine is sitting here. We've been talking this whole time, and Lorraine is sitting here.
I'm still here.
Lorraine, tell us a little bit about how you grew up. This is not it right from the start. It's not an easy question to ask, right? Like if I don't want to just say like what I know, tell us how you came into this world and ended up with the people you ended up with. You were adopted, right?
Yes. So
Okay.
I was adopted at 4 weeks old. My adopted parents wanted a little girl, and they had had a couple of miscarriages in between my two older brothers. And so I grew up knowing I was adopted. It wasn't, something that was kept secret. It was something that was treated as really special. So I actually used it against my brother. Mm-hmm. My middle brother would be like, we've had her long enough, send her back. And so I would tell my middle brother, Mom and Dad paid money for me and you were a mistake.
I love that.
We just had this love-hate relationship, but it hasn't been easy.
What was it like struggling with, you struggled with adoption when you were young. And so what was the biggest struggle that you had being adopted? What, like the emotion, or what was the toughest part about that maybe still was with you years later? What were the things that were going through your mind? Maybe lies that were going through your mind? And I know that you were very young, but the enemy speaks lies to us. And so what were some of those things that were going through your head about being adopted? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I think really I didn't have I mean, because I believe because of the fact that adoption was treated special in my family, it wasn't something I really struggled with until probably my teens. And it was more of, I wonder what my life would have been like if I was just with my birth family because of the fact of the things that I had gone through with my family.
So you were already thinking before, let's say you struggled when you were a teen, you were already thinking, I wonder what life would be like with other people out there, my birth parents.
Yeah, definitely I was. I mean, it was just due to everything that I've been through that I just thought my life could have been better with my birth family. You know, it was kind of the unknown, the grass is greener on the other side. Thinking that things would just be better in my life if I was with my birth family.
So did you know at what age did your parents sit you down and tell you that you were adopted?
So I don't even remember them ever telling me. Like, I always just grew up knowing I was adopted.
Okay.
So I would say at a very young age, it was always just treated as something really special in my family.
So when I was looking at your story, or I know your story, but I went through and listened to the thing and was there on Saturday. And so, you know, I'm just thinking about your story, and there's like these markers. Like, it's just like, you know, that you started with adoption, and you said when you were younger, it was looked at as cool, you know, but later on it got a little bit heavy and you had more questions about it. But then throughout your life, it's just like all these crazy markers of lows. So you have this adoption thing that looks really good on one hand, and then sexually abused by your father. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, at what age did that all start? Do you remember?
So it was 9 to 11 when I
Okay.
had that going on.
So it spanned for 2 years.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Wow. Okay. And then you had also mentioned, so you had that going on with your father from the ages of 9 to 11, but then on the other side, you have emotional abuse coming from your mom. Now, did your mom know what was going on?
You know, it's hard to say. There's times I feel like she should have known because she would find him in my room, you know, and so he would have excuses to that. At one time, I even had told my brother what was going on. Of course, he was a teenager himself. And so when I had told him the situation, it was around the time we were around other people. So he kind of was like, shh, you know, we'll talk about this at another time. So no action was ever taken. So I never felt like I had anyone I could talk to.
So now when this first started, when your father started sexually abusing you, what were you thinking? What were you feeling? I can't even imagine.
It's hard because I associated love the wrong way. You know, I had this horrible relationship with my mom where I couldn't do anything right, but my dad would do anything in the world for me. So it was kind of one of those things I just emotionally just kind of had to put out of my mind what was going on. And it wasn't something that happened, you know, very often. You know, it wasn't like a daily thing, a monthly thing. It was just spirit throughout, kind of spread out.
Right.
So it's kind of like I could just put it out of my mind. But I never felt like I felt safe enough to be able to go to my mom or anyone else during that time.
Were you afraid of your father?
You know, I wasn't.
Okay.
Like I said, I basically was demonstrated the wrong kind of love at that time, you know, and so it was an act that I was able to just put out of my mind and not really think about of what was going on during that time.
Now, the emotional abuse with your mom, did that start around the same time the sexual abuse started, or did that start prior to?
You know, that's really hard to say. I think my mom and I have never had a close relationship. I know her and my dad didn't have a good marriage, and I feel like maybe my mom really didn't want me. You know,
I guess what's kind of going through my mind right now, and I could be totally off track, is obviously you didn't have a great relationship with your mother. Your mother was emotionally abusing you. You just said she didn't have a great relationship with her husband. you said your dad loved you and would have done anything for you. Do you think some of that abuse from your mom was because the love that you're, not to sound off, but the love that your dad had for you wasn't what he had for her? You know what I mean?
Right.
really
You know, and some
interesting.
people would say that, you know.
Yeah. That is interesting to even make that connection.
Well, and to be honest, my dad would make it look like he would try and prevent us having a close relationship too. I mean, my dad would make it look like I would take things of my mom's, like her lipstick or makeup, and then I'd get in trouble for that. So we never were set up to have that relationship, but I also don't feel like my mom ever wanted that relationship with me either.
Wow. Okay. So that basically spanned why did the sexual abuse stop? Like, what happened that all of a sudden it came to an end?
So what's really interesting is my dad actually came to me and said, what I'm doing is wrong and I need to quit doing this. And within a week or two after that, my dad left. That's when my parents separated. And
when you were 11.
When I was 11.
Okay.
And then they got a divorce not long after that. And I was actually the only one out of the three of us kids that wasn't upset about the divorce, because to me, that meant the abuse stopped.
But let's take that back. So your parents are getting divorced, and so them separating, you were then going to live with your mother, who you didn't have a great relationship with, and you were kind of okay with the divorce because then the sexual abuse was stopping. But let's talk about the emotional abuse. So you're now living with your mom, and you still have that whole end of abuse that's still going on, and it's not ending. How was that?
Yeah, how long did you live with your mom? Because you don't jump to Vegas yet, but I mean, there was something where she moved out there, right?
Yeah.
So how long was it that you lived with her? Just her?
It was about 3 years.
Oh.
Yeah. And like the emotional abuse wasn't an everyday thing, you know?
Maybe explain a little bit, because some people out there listening may be like, well, what is emotional abuse? What does that look like? What does that mean? So maybe just talk about this a little bit, like what emotional abuse.
The emotional abuse that I dealt with was basically always being told I was never going to amount to anything.
Okay.
You know, just I didn't do well in school, but a lot of times me not doing well in school had to do with my home life. You know, so I was always being kind of reminded I'm a failure at what I'm doing, that I'm not going to amount to anything. I would get in trouble for crying, which I would do often just because I don't like conflict. I don't like, you know, I'd get yelled at all the time. And
Plus, you just need to release emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to release emotions, you know, and so I was taught to basically hold my emotions inside. Yeah, I mean, I struggled with, you know, depression and feeling like I had no self-worth.
Now we're talking about mental health. Now it's getting good. Yeah.
Now Jay's excited.
I'm tuning in now. No, so I mean, this is. I'm trying to go slow with your story.
I know.
And I'm trying to watch the time, you know, and I want to move us along, and I mean, I can't imagine that. You know, I'm sitting here, I'm like overwhelmed right now, thinking just about what you went through so far. It sucks.
So, because of the abuse, obviously you were depressed, and you had, just how you viewed yourself, how you thought about yourself. Did you share those feelings with anybody?
I didn't really share those feelings with anyone until after my parents' divorce. My parents had us seeing a counselor for the divorce. And about 6 months into seeing the counselor and also seeing a commercial about abuse and to tell someone,
right,
I finally asked to see the counselor alone. And I shared with them what had happened with my dad.
So you had never told, say, like a friend? Nobody knew. You kept it all to yourself?
Yeah, only my brother.
Okay.
You know, I'd mentioned it to my brother at one time.
So to people out there, you know, youth that may be out there listening, like, what can you say to them about that?
Yeah.
I mean, what can you say? I mean, obviously, I don't think you'd probably recommend keeping it all bottled in. What would you say?
Absolutely not to tell someone. to get the help that you need to also stay safe. I mean, I think it's really important that you tell someone.
I also know that when we would go into junior high, it would always be like finding yourself and finding your self-worth. And those are the years that you find yourself. And this was when all this was happening, all this was coming out. So like at school, or like if you were going to youth group at that point, did you find it difficult to kind of wear that mask and be like, yeah, I found myself, I love myself? Because I know a lot of kids wear those masks, even though at home, like, it is tough. But in front of other people, they wear the masks like, I know myself, I love myself, and I think everything's perfectly fine.
Well, you're exactly right about having a mask. I mean, because I was basically always told not to cry, not to show my emotions, people were blown away, especially my counselor. My counselor was thrown off guard when I told her.
He or she had no idea?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea. Because I had learned to be so good at hiding my emotions, and no one really knew. I would never share my feelings with people of what I was going through.
So let's talk a little bit about during this time. So you were involved in youth group when
Yes.
this was all going on. So you started youth group in like 7th grade. Is that when you got started?
Yeah, it was 7th grade.
Okay, so that was right around when your parents were getting divorced and all that was going on. So how was your faith at that point? Like, what type of role did Christ play in all these emotions and everything that you had going on?
So I loved the church, and the reason I loved the church is a place that I felt loved, I felt safe, and I felt welcome. So I was always drawn, even at a young age, wanting to be at church. And youth group, my parents used youth group as a babysitting, something to keep us out of trouble, which I'm very thankful for. And so we would go to every summer camp, we'd go to Easter camp. And it was at summer camp, a bunch of girls were emotional in the bathroom. All of them were crying. And come to find out, each one of them had been abused in some way. And so we went and talked to one of the youth leaders that night, and all accepted Christ that night. And it was really after then that I found this support group amongst the adult leaders and youth pastor. And so I really just poured any extra time I could have with them. And they were always super encouraging. Looking back, if you asked my youth pastor, I was annoyed because I was very.
Do you still talk to them?
I do.
That's awesome.
My husband met my youth pastor a few years ago, but he'll tell you I was just always an emotional wreck. I was always just, in a sense, seeking attention. And it was very much draining for a leader because I'd be like, this is going on. I always wrote letters to them.
Did you really?
Yes. And they were always supportive and loving to me. I really, truly feel like if it wasn't for them, I don't know where I'd be today.
So now how long, so you started seeing your counselor because of the divorce, and you had to. How long did you see that counselor?
I think it was a couple of years. He was a Christian counselor through our church.
Okay.
So I saw him for a few years.
And did you find that helped you work through some of your emotions and everything that had been going on?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And one of the interesting things is, I told the counselor, obviously my mom was brought into awareness, everything that had happened. And I would say for about a year, my mom and I got along well. I think a lot of it had to do with guilt from my mom's side. And then it was shortly not long after that, things kind of just went back to the way they were.
Okay, Lorraine, so you now have this group of friends at youth group. You kind of all share with your youth pastor. You're developing decent relationships with your youth group, your youth pastor, and different adults there. And that's leading into, say, 14, 15, somewhere in that time frame. So, but you start to, self-harm comes into the picture, and you start hurting yourself.
Yeah, I was really seeking attention and trying to, really resolve of what feelings I were having. And so I started, they didn't have that term, back when I was a kid of using cutting, but that's exactly what I was doing. I didn't necessarily want to kill myself, but I needed to inflict pain on myself. I even tried to swallow, pills, to try and kill myself. But I didn't really.
You didn't want to do it.
No,
Yeah.
no, I didn't want to do it. I actually freaked out right afterwards. But didn't tell anyone.
Do you think it was to numb the pain that you're going through? Because I know a lot of people or teenagers that self-harm do it so that they can either feel something or even numb the pain that they're going through.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is trying to numb what I was feeling. I didn't know how to process those feelings. I didn't know what to do with those feelings. And not only did I deal with all of the abuse, I also dealt with my brothers getting mixed up with drugs and alcohol, and so a lot of I didn't know how to deal with those emotions.
Were you still seeing the counselor at this time?
Yeah, but not, I learned how to hide my feelings,
right.
If I didn't want to express those things. So he never knew that I was going through those things.
Did you ever tell your youth pastor or anybody what you were going through?
No, just friends.
Just friends knew what you were doing. So that was around the age of 14, 15. So just take us down the road a little bit further. So then what kind of happens next in your life?
So at 15, my brother died in a car wreck. And that was really devastating for our family. Instead of our family coming closer together, everyone kind of went their own separate ways. And I just really embraced my youth leaders and youth group. They were the ones that I wanted to be with to kind of help me through everything I was going through.
So this was an older brother?
It was my middle brother, Mark.
Your middle brother.
He was 3 years. He was 18.
Okay, so both of your brothers were older than you.
Yes.
Gotcha. So, okay, so your middle brother died in a car accident, obviously unexpectedly. How did that affect the relationship between you and your mom?
We didn't get closer together, and we didn't, we weren't any further apart. I think the hard thing is when my brother died in a car wreck, my mom actually wasn't in town. She was in Las Vegas visiting her boyfriend, and I was the one that received that call.
Oh, my goodness.
And so that was really difficult, is I was the one that got the call that had to deal with that. My mom obviously came back from Las Vegas that next morning. But yeah, I felt alone. It was very difficult receiving that call.
So you were home by yourself and you received the call, and like your dad or your older brother weren't there with you.
Well, they were divorced, so your dad was gone.
But so you were basically all alone in that moment?
I was. It was actually, I had talked my mom into letting me stay by myself when she went away for the weekend. I stayed with a friend the first night, and then it was a Sunday night. We just got home from youth group, and I talked my mom into letting me stay by myself, and that was when we got the calls in the middle of the night. So I was the one that received the call about my brother, and then having to call my mom to tell her.
I can't even imagine. Now, where was your older brother at this time?
Jeff really had stepped away from the family at that time. He was heavily mixed up with drugs and alcohol.
Okay.
And so he wasn't living with my mom. He would have been 20 years old or so.
I'm like, my head is spinning right now. I can't even imagine. You're 15?
Yeah.
15, and you're home alone. Your mom's in Vegas, and you receive a phone call from the police or whomever that your brother passes away.
Yeah, it was difficult. It was, he hadn't passed at that time, so he was in the hospital. But he was at a vegetable state.
Were you able to get to the hospital, or not until your mom came back?
I didn't go until my mom came back. My dad and his wife went to the hospital. We were able to get hold of him, so my dad was able to go. And then when my mom came back is when I went to the hospital.
Now, you had a decent relationship with this brother?
We did at that time. That's the brother that I used to fight with all the time.
Yeah.
And about 9 months before he passed away, he actually had really cleaned up his life. He was free of drugs, and we had really started to build a relationship.
So in your head, you're probably thinking, okay, I'm finally establishing a decent relationship with somebody in my family, and that's just completely ripped away. What were you thinking?
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm really thankful that we did restore our relationship.
Right.
But yeah, you're exactly right. We had actually built a friendship. We could really have great conversations, something we've never had before. And then he was just gone.
So then right after your brother passes away, is that when your mom says, I want to move. I want to leave. Like, how did that go?
Yeah, about 6 months after my brother passed away, my mom told me that we were picking up and moving to Las Vegas. And I was completely devastated. Didn't want to leave my church. I didn't want to leave that security, the place I felt accepted, where I felt loved. And I was seeing a counselor at that time.
Same counselor, or did you ever switch counselors?
Same counselor.
Okay.
And the counselor knew my mom and I struggled with our relationship. And he was the one that actually suggested maybe I could find someone to live with and stay in San Diego so I wouldn't have to pick up and leave my church.
So let's talk about that. So obviously the counselor says, and your mom's okay with this at this point? Like, she's like, or was she like, no, you have to move to Vegas with me?
She actually was okay with it. I mean, if you ask my youth pastor, he remembers us walking into his office and my mom's leading the charge and I'm following behind with my head down. And my mom asked my youth pastor, do you know of a good home that Lorraine can live? And, if you talk to Timothy now, Timothy will tell you it's like she was trying to get rid of a puppy or something. And he's like, Lorraine wouldn't even look at me, in the eyes.
I can't even imagine what you were feeling at that point.
To be honest, I was actually relieved of the fact that I wouldn't have to go to Vegas and, the possibility of not having to leave my church. I was so scared of what my life would be like in Vegas. At that time, as I mentioned, I was cutting, heavily depressed, and I was afraid I probably wouldn't live if I moved to Vegas with her.
But the emotions that you had to be feeling, obviously you've never had a good relationship with your mom, but and please, if I'm out of line, just say it, but you truly had to be feeling, my mom doesn't love me. I mean, did you ever feel that way?
I think I felt like that off and on throughout my life, Yeah.
I can't even imagine. So at that point, is that when you started thinking, I wonder what my life would be like with my birth parents? Is that when that started happening?
Yeah, I would say off and on, I would think about that. What would it be like to live with them? It's the unknown is so hard because sometimes, even everything I've been through, I always thought it could be worse.
Right.
So there was always that possibility it could be worse living with my birth family too.
So let's talk about it. Praise God, somebody opens up their home and you're able to stay in San Diego.
Yeah, so I met Dana on a mission trip. We became instant friends. She was easy to talk to. I opened up about everything I'd been going through. She knew about the depression. She knew about cutting. She knew about everything that had led up to that. And Dana was trying to be really encouraging to me, that things are going to be okay. And she just felt in her heart that she was going to ask her mom if I could come live with them. And I had only known Dana for like 2 months, which blows me away thinking that she would even think that, and her mom being a strong Christian prayed about it and they opened up their home to let me live with them.
That's amazing.
It really is, because night and day difference of my home life. With my mom, I had a 1.9, so I wasn't even passing in school. And then I lived with Dana and her mom, and she was a single parent, just a teacher, not making a lot of money. And I ended up with a 3.5. It was just night and day difference of my home environment that is really what I needed.
So you were, say, 16 when you started living with them.
Yes.
Okay, then you finished out high school with them. You were still hugely involved in your youth group. Were you still seeing your counselor throughout high school, or did that kind of, you got like, okay, I don't need my counselor anymore, I'm good?
Yeah, it kind of got faded out. Part of it, I think, is, when my mom moved to Vegas, she pretty much cut all ties of money-wise to me. She would pay Dana's mom just a couple of $100s, but anything extra, I had to do it on my own. So I didn't go to a lot of the school dances because I couldn't afford them. I didn't want Dana's mom paying for those things. So counseling stopped after, my mom moved.
Do you think that after you moved in with Dana and her mom that your mental health got better because you felt that love? Or do you think it still stayed pretty much the same even though you still felt that love from someone?
I think definitely it got better living with them. I mean, Dana's mom was super encouraging and loving. They accepted me for who I was. It was easy to talk to Dana's mom and even Dana. So I definitely think things got a lot better for me.
Dana became an amazing friend and somebody that was really a big influence in your life, right, Lo?
Yeah, she was the first person to teach me unconditional love.
Awesome. And so you are connected with Dana, and from what I understand, you go off to college and something traumatic happens to this relationship. And again, we're looking at all these different things. Adoption that was a little sketchy, right? And then it went into sexual abuse, and you find yourself emotional abuse and divorce and moving and cutting and depression. And then you have this glimmer of hope. And what happens at this point?
Dana died in a car wreck, which completely devastated me. I felt so lost, dealt with, here was the first person that truly loved me, and then she was gone.
So Dana passes. You're away at school. Obviously, unbelievably traumatic. The first person that you truly feel that you have a loving friendship, relationship with, she's now gone. What was going through your head regarding God? Or, did you, some people may go, really, God? Like, why this? Why now? This was my first I'm finally feeling loved. And now this? Like, did you have any of that?
I at this point of my story, I didn't really. I think part of it was being able to see the example of Dana's mom with her being so strong in her faith.
Right.
Really looking to her. And I had that community of youth group and youth leaders that were still surrounded by me. So I think that helped a lot.
That's awesome.
But I did feel really lost and questioned, what was I going to do next? I didn't feel right being in San Diego anymore. Part of it was my roommates were all moving out. And, the thought of Dana being gone, I just did not feel like I could stay there.
So then where did you go?
So I moved to Texas, moved to Fort Worth. I had a friend's family that knew my frustrations. They knew everything I had been going through. And so they opened up their home and said, you should come visit. And I couldn't afford to visit and decided just to move. And I packed up all my stuff in a U-Haul van and moved out to Fort Worth, Texas.
Wow.
So were you done with college at this point? Did you just start working in Texas? What were you doing?
So I wasn't done with college. I did get a job when I was in Texas. I wanted to build up my residence so I didn't have to pay out-of-state tuition.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
So lead us to this next spot, the next low. I mean, it's incredible how it's just one thing after another, and there is another thing that happens in your life. It's incredible. At some point, you're not living with this family, from what I understand, and you're living in some apartment in Fort Worth, and something happens there. And this is another instance where you had to deal with a traumatic experience. And let's think about it through the lens of mental health. What happened?
So you're right. I lived in an apartment on my own for about a year. I lived with the family for a year, and then I moved in there. And I had someone break into my apartment and rape me. And you're right about all these different lows I had. I almost came to expect lows to happen in my life. Like something always happened every year or two that it was just kind of expected. Like I just knew something kind of bad would happen. And being attacked, I lost all sense of security. I couldn't live by myself. And that's the time I turned my back on God. I just felt like I still believed him as a creator, but I didn't believe he had any role in our life because I just couldn't see how this was going to glorify him or what his plan or purpose would be.
Thanks for being honest about that and sharing. I mean, that's one of those things that I went through one of those times in my life where I was like, you know what? I don't give up on God, but I just, it's really tough to believe in him right now. And I feel weird always saying that. You know, I think that's a sensitive thing to say. So I appreciate that honesty.
So I can't even imagine this experience. I can't imagine what you're thinking at this moment, but we're sitting here now and you obviously found hope. You found some sort of peace, I'm guessing. And just take us through the steps that got you there, because I have no words to I don't even know where to start in that sense. So what steps did you take to get healthy mentally, and where did you go from there?
That's a great question. I went to counseling for a while. I found counseling to be really difficult at that time. I found it to almost make the matter worse, because you got to remember I lost all sense of security. So being home by myself, silence bothered me more than anything. I moved back in with I call them my Texas family, to kind of help build that security. But it made me, I've pretty much have taken care of myself since I was 15 years old, you know, haven't been able to depend on family, you know, even people that I've loved that have come into my life have been taken away from me at times. So I had to depend on people in that security. It was very difficult. And I went many, 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 many years with God not on my side, you know, that I chose not to have on my side. I felt like something was missing, and I would try and go to church, but I would get too emotional about it and didn't want to deal with it. And then probably about 12 years after being attacked, I really felt the Holy Spirit working in me. I attended a church where it talked about authority issues and getting under the umbrella of God. And that's where I really learned about our relationship with God. And I also was reading The Purpose-Driven Life, where it talks about it's okay to get angry with God. And I broke down and got angry with God, you know, of just everything that I had been through in my life. And so it was like the Holy Spirit was really just working in my life. And I was tired of the emotions holding me back from being who I really, truly could be. And so it's just all those things that were working in my life that I chose to live fully for God and trust. It had to come down to me trusting that I may never understand why I was attacked. And I had to be okay with that to be able to move on.
Mm.
Okay, Lorraine, so you said that it was really from the attack until you really started getting back with Christ and really coming to terms with all your emotions and getting mad at God and coming to terms with everything that had been happening to you. That was a 12-year span. Mm. So during that 12 years, your back was kind of against God. Like you had turned your back on God, and you may have been going to church, I'm not really sure, but God really wasn't a part of your life during that 12-year span.
That is correct.
So were you still seeing a counselor during that time frame?
No, I saw for a couple years after I was attacked. I just really started to get this attitude. I'm the only one that can take care of me.
Like, I don't need you. I got it. I don't need anybody else. I can handle myself.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. So you stopped seeing your counselor. I'm Miss Independent. I can handle it. And you're going through your life for the next 12 years. And then God starts working on you. Well, obviously, he's been working on you this whole time. But you actually start paying attention to the fact that God's been working on you. So you get involved. You get hooked up with the church.
Yeah. I started going to a church in Texas that's really gifted in new believers and what it looks like to really build a relationship with Christ.
So you start going to church, you start volunteering, getting involved.
Yeah, right away. I mean, within a month of finding this church, which I made every excuse why I couldn't go to this church. It was a 45-minute drive, which in Texas, that's not a big deal. Here it is in Pittsburgh. But I just decided I was going to fully live for God. And so I started working with the youth and just jumped right in.
So now at this point, you're fully living for God. You're volunteering. You have an awesome church that you love. Just briefly tell us What's your mental state like at this point? Like your mental health, like how are you? Like how are you viewing your history, your past? Like where are you mentally at this point?
I think mentally I was at a really good place and starting to find joy in my life. And, everything except for being attacked, I could see how God was using it to glorify Him. Through my trials that I've been through, I have this connection with students. I mean, it's very rare for a student to have something come up that I haven't already been through.
Yeah, been there, done that.
So
Right.
I started to really find this joy in my life, and I learned that God was enough to fill that love and that void that I felt through my entire life.
So something I just want to jump in, and Jay and Bella are going to crack up when I say this, but something that you just said that hit home. We talk about finding purpose in your pain. And throughout your pain and all the trials and everything that you've had going on, you found your purpose. You found that you can connect with youth and help youth because of everything that you've been through and everything that you've had going on.
Yeah, that's really where my passion comes in for students. I mean, if it wasn't for my church and youth group, I probably would be what the statistics talk about. Most people that go through my trials get mixed up with drugs or alcohol or, suicide,
That's true.
Like, how aren't you a part of those statistics?
I think 100% goes to God. And then the people that God has placed around me, I think has made a huge difference in my life.
Your life starts to turn around. You have a great church family. You're involved in church and your mental health and just you're feeling good about everything. You're finding purpose and everything that you've been through. And then a huge blessing comes your way and you meet your husband.
I do. Mr. Fabulous, Mark Shipman.
Mr. Fabulous.
Some know him as Beloved.
Yes. That's been a long time. I remember that.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was at a really good place in my life that to be honest, when I met Mark, I didn't change anything about myself, including my schedule. I don't know, what do you want to do?
He's good.
He's good.
He's good.
No, but I was at a really good place. I mean, I've been married before. That I dated a guy for 8 years. We got married for a year and it ended in divorce. And I was not at the right place at that time mentally to really build on that relationship. I was so independent that I was stuck on how can I take care of me instead of, that husband and wife relationship. And so thankfully I had grown from all of that and was in a healthy spot when I met Mark.
So Lorraine, you got this guy. Mark is fabulous. We probably should have found another mic and had him in here to speak into your story and whatnot. He's a fabulous guy, and my son's small group still.
Yeah.
Or was that okay? Yeah, even now.
Yep.
Yeah, man, that's going to be tough. But I should say. It's going to be tough because there's something coming up that we're going to share that's going to be sad and happy at the same time. But
It's all good.
It's all good. Lorraine, this is where I jump in. So you've always had a passion for youth. You were telling us about how God really used the youth group at a very young age, junior high, and you've just always, loved students. So. I guess just quickly run through with me, or jump in.
So you moved to Pittsburgh.
You moved to Pennsylvania first.
Yeah, we moved to the mountain towns.
Out in the middle of nowhere.
One stoplight.
Yes. Where did you live?
Wyalusing,
What?
which is north central PA.
Never heard of Wyalusing.
One restaurant, one stoplight.
Yeah, nice.
How do you spell Wyalusing?
We had 2 stoplights in my town growing up. We had 2 stoplights.
All right, so you went from Wyalusing to the Commonwealth, as Jay would say.
Yeah. Well, Wyalusing's in the Commonwealth. Wyalusing's in the Commonwealth. And then you go to the other side of the Commonwealth, the left side, and end up in Pittsburgh and get involved with the Bible Chapel, right? And so this walk us through this pretty quick.
Yeah, so Mark and I found the Bible Chapel online and we started attending. Mark actually connected right away with student ministry. We had been volunteering before and he liked us volunteering together. I probably would have waited at least a couple of months, check it out first, but Mark connected with Luke. And so we started volunteering in the junior high ministry. And about 2 years of being a full-time volunteer, I was approached and asked if I would come on staff to be an associate director and work alongside of you and Luke with Jay.
Right. And so I think I was there for 5 years. And I think for the first 2, you were just like this super volunteer that everyone talked about. And then for maybe like a year, we worked beside each other. And then for the last 2, you got to become my boss.
That's a whole different episode.
Right. Let's keep that a secret.
I could talk about Jay then.
Yeah.
Well, those were Jay's dark 2 years at the
I
Bible
know.
Chapel.
It really was. Did you listen? You're going to have to be honest. Did you listen to my
I've
story
listened
yet?
to part of Bella's, but I haven't. I couldn't find yours, to be honest.
Oh, it's on there.
Okay.
It's on
When
there.
I went on there, I could only find Bella's.
Oh, that's when Karen told me. Anyway, we'll cut this, but Karen,
It's there now.
it's
okay,
there now.
good.
Yeah.
I'll listen to it.
Listen to it because but honestly, those last 2 years when you were my boss, there were my mental health started to go downhill, which was like a 4-year process that just where I just got healthy, the last 6, 7, 8, 9 months, right? And so you know me maybe as 1 year healthy, and then the other 2, I was really struggling, and on top of that, I think God was doing something to call me into missions, and then through some great people there, called me into doing this C50 thing. So there's like a design there, and God's always doing his thing, but at the same time, Lo is like over me, and I'm tripping out with my mental illness, So I mean, she's dealing with that. But anyway, that's a whole nother story, and I don't want to talk about me. But you're at the Bible Chapel, and really things are going really well from maybe what I see. I mean, you're an excellent volunteer. They bring you on. You're moving up through the thing, and like God's really using your passion for students and whatnot. So where are you at with your mental health at this point? Because we're just about ready to jump into something that's really exciting, but where is your mental health? I mean, you said that you were in a pretty good spot, but you hadn't dealt with the rape. So did you ever deal with that? Is it buried? Is it something that you say, I'm not going to touch that? Start to tell us a little bit about how God's working in your life at just when I was at the Bible Chapel in those years leading up to, I don't know, about a couple months ago.
Well, I would say that I dealt with the rape more in my mid-30s, when I built that relationship with Christ and finally realizing I may not understand the purpose and plan. I was really able to just move on from everything I was dealing with there. So it's not something that's buried. It's one of those things that, I don't completely understand, and it's okay for me not to understand.
Oh my gosh, we could just spend so much time on not burying the struggle, I mean, that's like, it's huge. You can't bury it. And so you don't have to wear it on your sleeve. You can put it to the side and say, it's right here.
It happened.
It happened.
I understand that, but I'm at a point now where I'm okay, and I'm going to move and get beyond it, and I'm not going to let it define me, and that's huge.
That's exactly.
Right.
That's exactly. And I had to do that. I mean, it's those are one of those things you have to do, along with forgiveness. I mean, that's a big thing for me. Is I learned to forgive my parents, my adopted parents.
Oh my gosh, Lorraine, you're killing me. I mean, forgiveness after all these years.
So do you still speak with your adoptive parents?
I do. We don't have, like my dad, we don't have a father-daughter relationship, but I still respect him as a parent. I still have good memories. I've been fortunate enough that my dad has asked for forgiveness also, but I didn't forgive him for him. I forgave him for me. That's such a heavy load to carry on that affected all areas of my life by not forgiving. So it was something I had to do for me.
At what age do you think you were when you forgave him?
I would say probably 17, 18.
So early on.
Yeah, early
Wow.
on.
Okay, I was not expecting you to say that.
I wasn't either. And I think that that's a very, very mature, healthy thing to do, to forgive for you. Was Ron talking about something like this? He was saying it's really good.
It's freeing.
It's freeing, but
He talked about how it doesn't have to change your relationship. Like it's okay not to have that relationship afterwards. You know, a lot of times people think that, and to be honest, my dad associates forgiveness with that our relationship's going to change. And I had to, my dad will ask for forgiveness about every 5 years. And I had to, this last time I realized he thinks our relationship is going to change. And I had to tell him, this is all I can offer. That I don't have that desire to have a father-daughter relationship, and I don't need that.
very, very healthy. If Becca was here, she could really speak into codependency and how she has in her life, and I don't want to speak for her when she's not here, but would really look at things through forgiving for other people and doing stuff for other people. So I think that's really healthy and something that the people that are listening should take note of, that you can forgive for you so you can move on, but it doesn't have to restore some relationship, to make things new again. You're just letting go of that and saying it's in God's hands and I'm just going to forgive them.
So basically you're at the Bible chapel. God is good. Life is good. You have an awesome husband. He's fabulous. He's your favorite. And so something happens. You decide that you're going to spit in a tube.
Yes. Craziest thing ever. I have never had the desire to find my birth parents because I never wanted them to know what kind of life I've had. I couldn't imagine telling them the family I was adopted into. And so, one of the things that's most frustrating about being adopted is not really knowing your medical history. And so I had that desire, to know what my medical history is. I came across on TV, there was a special for 23andMe, which is DNA testing. And they're not really the site to look for family members. They're really more known for the ancestry part and the health, genetic health.
Okay.
So I decided to do that. So I spit in a tube, which is much harder than you think because you can't eat or drink 30 minutes ahead of time. And I sent it off. Now, they do have DNA relative matching on there. And I joked to Mark, maybe I'll find a fourth or fifth cousin on there. Who knows? And a month later, I got the results back, found out my ancestry, found out my health. And then I went on to check out the family DNA. And very first thing that popped up is 50% DNA match. We predict David Mexico to be your father.
Mexico's your last name.
It is.
That is so cool.
You know what's even best? I found out my birth certificate.
I love
because they
this.
didn't name me, because they knew I was going to be adopted. So my original birth certificate says "Baby Girl Mexico."
Baby girl Mexico.
I'm as white can be.
You know what? We need to put that as the title for
Baby Girl Mexico.
Baby Girl
Baby Girl Mexico. Write that down. Baby Girl Mexico.
Yeah.
So you find your birth parents. I mean, there's obviously an entire podcast just about that journey, which has only been, say, the past 4 months for you.
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
But you find your birth parents. You go out for Thanksgiving. You go out for Christmas. You find out you have this huge entire family in California.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was real hesitant at first. I didn't really, being adopted, and I almost feel like this is for anyone that's adopted, but especially after everything I've been through, there was that fear of rejection. I've heard stories about people that have been adopted, meeting their birth family, some of them not wanting anything to do with them. So my emotions were a roller coaster as we're trying to figure out, were these my birth parents? And, their very first formal email to me revealed that they have always loved me, that my birthday was always really difficult for them. And, that was something I always struggled with, before I found God, before God was able to fill that love and void for me. I struggled with, why can't anybody love me?
Right.
And it started with being put up for adoption, and then being adopted into an abusive home and losing, my brother and Dana and failed marriage, so they revealed to me they've always loved me. It's kind of like God's just completely flipped my story. Like, I don't even know how to share my testimony anymore, because it always has been, I struggled with, why can't anyone love me? And they've revealed that. So it's been great. It's been amazing. I have a sister that looks just like me.
It's nuts.
We actually went into a store, and some ladies that worked there was like, are you guys sisters? And we just started laughing. We're like, if you only knew.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's start to move towards wrapping it up, okay? Again, like Karen said, there's a whole story about the adoption. I mean, it's super cool, but the thing is they want to adopt you again, or not again, adopt you back. They're taking you back.
They want me legally to be part of the family.
Okay, I don't know how that works. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, is there like privileges with that or something?
There is. I mean, the privileges of basically having legal rights if something were to happen to them and stuff, which actually will take away any legal rights I have with my adopted family.
Oh, okay. So by your birth family adopting you, that disengages you in a way from the family that initially adopted you.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
Nice.
So, okay. So I'm interested in this. Let's start to wrap it up, because this is an awesome story. And what this brings up to me first and foremost is you have found, after a whole life so far of hurt and pain, and a major thread of that going through, does anybody love me? Who am I? You find parents. Okay, I mean, you obviously have Mark, right? Which is great. But now you have parents. Like, there are things happening now that you can look at and go, wow, like people do. And, so what's going on with your relationship with the Lord? How has this changed your relationship with the Lord, or even just your mental health, and finally thinking for the first time, I'm loved. I have an identity. I'm Lorraine. I have parents. I have people that love me and whatnot. How has that changed?
I think more than anything, I've always had this distorted view on family, and through finding my birth parents and them revealing how much they love me, it's changed, of what family's all about. Like right now, I hear from someone in my family every single day. My adopted family, I hear from every 2-3 months, and I actually have this longing. I miss being around them.
So what are you going to do?
I'm going to move out to California. Back to being a California girl. But, I do. It's been really neat to experience that. That's something I've never had. I was okay not having it, but God has completely flipped my story. And, someone pointed out to me recently, a lot of times we see God working kind of after the fact. Like, I can see God's hands in that. I have seen God just completely flip my story through while he's flipping it, and just like, whoa, what do I do with this? Yeah. But it's been amazing. It really has. I think it's been really eye-opening for Mark too, is just seeing how a lot of people don't realize being adopted, even if you're adopted into a good family, you do still struggle with that being adopted, that rejection feeling, you know, even if you understand it or not.
Wow. So one of the things we like to do at the end of the podcast is to ask our guests a couple questions, and we got just a last couple questions. And the first one is, where are you at right now with Jesus Christ? And answer that. You can answer that with however you want to, but give us like one word too, like that would summarize your journey of all the struggle that you've been through.
I think to summarize to one word would be strength, with the cross as the T. You know, without Christ, I don't see how I could have made it through any of these things. And when I think of Christ, I think of love.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So looking back, just, trying to speak out to the people that could be listening here today, youth, adults, whomever, whatever age may be listening, what would you say, with everything, the different mental health, the self-harm, the depression, how you viewed yourself, what would you say to people out there listening today that may be struggling with some of that right now?
I would say definitely getting help is important, but also surrounding yourself around a community that are Christ followers. I really don't know what I would do without the community of church, with youth group and youth pastors that were able to pour into me. And, no matter where you are in your faith, even if you're not even sure you believe in Christ, there's still that sense of hope.
So that leads me, Lorraine, to asking you the final question for today. You've seen a lot of hurt. And when I think about your story, I'm just, maybe because like when you live it, you hurt in a different way, and then when you hear it, you're just like, golly,
How did someone even get through that is what I'm thinking.
We just lived a whole life in a short amount of time, and all we heard was like so many hard things. So you've seen a lot of hurt. One of the things that C50 that we like to say is we go from hurt to hope. That's on our logo. And hope doesn't mean that you heal and then you have hope. What I like about that is that hurt to hope. Like you still might be hurt and you still got questions. Love what you just said. So what is hope to you? What is hope to you?
Hope to me is really finding joy in your life, and the joy that you find in your life is through Jesus Christ. A lot of people wonder how I can have such joy after everything that I've been through, and it's only because of Him that I can. And knowing that I'm going to get through these, just like whoever's listening, you're going to get through these trials that you're going through. With surrounding yourself in a community and having a relationship with Jesus Christ is where you're going to find that hope and joy in your life.
Thanks for listening today. Again, we have tried hard to share truth authentically, and we hope that this has been a helpful time in your life. To reach us, donate, share your story, and give us feedback on how we can do a better job reaching people that are struggling. Please go to www.c50hope.com.
We leave you with this. Now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. 2 Corinthians 3:17. And remember, as Jack Miller said, you're far more loved than you ever dare imagine.